The most intelligent person in the room is rarely the one filling it with their voice. And if you have ever noticed this and wondered whether the quiet ones know something, the loud ones don't, whether the stillness of the person saying the least contains more than the noise of the person saying the most, whether there is something specific and deliberate and psychologically meaningful behind the silence of genuinely intelligent people, rather than simply the absence of something to say, then you are already thinking about this more carefully than most people do. And what the research reveals about the relationship between intelligence and silence is not just fascinating, but immediately recognizable to anyone who has spent time around people who are genuinely, substantively, uncomfortably smart, because their silence is not empty. It is one of the most information-dense behaviors a human being can produce. And understanding why they choose it tells you something important. Not just about them, but about the nature of intelligence itself, and what it actually looks like when it is operating at its fullest capacity, rather than performing itself for an audience that has confused volume with depth. Let's begin with the cognitive explanation. The specific neurological reason that higher intelligence tends to produce less rather than more verbal output in social situations, which is almost the precise opposite of what most people intuitively expect. Research on what psychologists call elaborative interrogation, the cognitive tendency to automatically generate questions, qualifications, and alternative perspectives in response to any incoming information, rather than simply accepting and reflecting it, shows that this tendency scales with measured intelligence, meaning that the smarter the brain, the more automatically and the more extensively it interrogates any idea before accepting it as sufficiently understood to be worth expressing. This means that the intelligent person's silence in a conversation is not the silence of having nothing to say. It is the silence of having too much to say and too much awareness of the complexity of saying it accurately to commit to the simplified version that the conversational pace demands, which is why smart people so often appear to opt out of discussions where the level of nuance required to say something genuinely accurate would require more time and more context than the social situation has patience for, and why their contributions, when they do arrive, tend to land with a precision and a weight that the continuous contributions of less careful thinkers almost never produce. Now, let's talk about the relationship between intelligence and epistemic humility, the accurate awareness of the boundaries of one's own knowledge, because this is the second and equally important cognitive driver of intelligent silence, and it connects directly to one of the most robustly documented findings in all of cognitive psychology. The Dunning-Kruger Effect demonstrates with extraordinary consistency that the least knowledgeable people in any domain are the most confident in their verbal expression about it, while the most knowledgeable are the most aware of how much they don't know, how many qualifications belong on any honest claim, and how many ways a confident statement can be wrong. And this awareness translates directly into verbal restraint, into the qualified, careful, sometimes frustratingly hedged language that genuine expertise produces, and sometimes into the silence that is the only fully honest response to a question whose real answer is more complex than the room is ready to receive. The intelligent person who says nothing when asked for a confident opinion is frequently doing so because the honest answer begins with, "It depends," and continues for longer than anyone present wants to listen. And the choice between giving an honest, complicated answer and a dishonest, simple one is a choice that a mind with sufficient integrity makes consistently in favor of silence. There is a third dimension to intelligent silence that is perhaps the most psychologically important and the least frequently discussed, and that is the relationship between silence and social observation. between saying less and seeing more, between the verbal restraint of the intelligent person and the quality of social and contextual information that restraint makes available to them. Every moment you spend speaking is a moment during which your attentional resources are directed outward toward the construction and delivery of your own verbal output, rather than inward toward the observation and processing of what is happening in the room around you, which means that the person who speaks least in any group interaction is accumulating, through that restraint, a significantly richer and more accurate map of the social reality of the situation. Who is performing versus who is genuine, whose confidence is knowledge versus whose is anxiety, what the actual stakes are for each person present. And this informational advantage compounds across the duration of any interaction into a quality of social intelligence and strategic clarity that the most verbally active participants in the same interaction simply cannot develop because they have been spending their cognitive resources on output rather than input. And here is the final truth about why smart people stay silent, the one that is simplest and most profound, and that requires no research citation, because it is directly observable in any interaction with a genuinely intelligent, genuinely self-possessed person. Smart people stay silent because they have learned, through experience, through the repeated observation, that most words spoken in most social situations add more noise than signal, through the discovery that the internal conversation happening in their own mind is often more interesting and more productive than the external conversation happening around them. That silence is not the absence of participation, but a form of it, not the withholding of intelligence, but its most disciplined expression, and that the words worth saying are worth the silence it takes to make sure they are genuinely worth saying, which is a standard that most conversation never meets, and that the intelligent mind, once it has learned to apply it, finds almost impossible to lower. Subscribe for more mind secrets.